Aku Kakinalin. Welcome here to this webinar on thriving Indigenous women. We're going to hear from two of our panelists, Teresa McGinnis and also Mima Salas. And also I will share some of my own experiences. And I'm Deborah Sanchez, the moderator for this event. So one of the first things I want to do is say thank you to Audrey Kitagawa and all of her team for this opportunity to present this information to you and to share with you what Thriving Women have been doing. So one of my, I think initially I just wanted to say that my involvement with the Seventh Generation Fund starts way before I became a board member. And I've been the board member with them for quite a while now. I believe at least 10 years. But I was also the co-chair of the Raramuri Chumash Council. And in 2001, we crossed from the mainland to the island, our islands of origin. So I'm from the Chumash people in California. And some of our stories talk about us leaving the island and going to the mainland. And that was our islands of origin. And so in other words, we believe, and there's many people that believe that we came from the Channel Islands and then went to the mainland. So when I was coordinating some of that and also participating in those events, it was Seventh Generation Fund that supported and nurtured us through that time. And it was the first time in over 150 years that the people had gotten in their traditional canoe and crossed the ocean from the mainland to the islands. So it was a very significant event that woke up a lot of people. It started revitalization of traditional ways. It also started revitalization of the language, which I will talk to you about a little later. But it had a profound effect on the people. And so as a result of the many people that helped us get there, including the Seventh Generation, it changed the trajectory of an entire people. And so that's one way that I got involved with the Seventh Generation Fund. Also, I just wanted to say that part of what the Seventh Generation Fund has been doing is getting involved in globally and supporting people, Indigenous people all around the world. My life also changed by getting involved with Seventh Generation Fund's global activities and support for Indigenous people around the world. And I think that part of what we do that's beyond, say, program work is also to uplift and support Indigenous peoples. And in particular, the program of Thriving Women program is something that we want to share with you as well. Our two panelists today are Mima Salas. She's an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation on her mother's side, and as Xicana, descending from the Gabrieliño band of Mission Indians on her father's side. She was born and raised in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's now living in Humboldt County. She's also working as a Thriving Women Program Coordinator and studying environmental studies at Cal Poly Humboldt. I want to acknowledge that. I'm also back in school trying to get my master's degree in linguistics. So she's dedicated to community building, centered on protecting and uplifting the roles of Indigenous women and Two-Spirit peoples. An advocate for mental health, is driven to empower youth voices and encourages storytelling as a pathway to healing. She has experience working alongside Native communities in Arizona while serving as a member of the Morningstar Leaders Youth Council. She's a proud older sister and hopes to pave new pathways for them and the rest of their families. Our other panelist is Teresa McGinnis. She's the Chief of Staff for Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous People. She's an enrolled member of the Yurok tribe and a descendant of the Wiyot and Tolowa Diné Nation. She's a wife and a mother, the founder of Mothers and Daughters Native Moon, and she's dedicated to her local community and schools, tribal families, and believes in empowering youth through an end period poverty and bringing awareness to the importance of a young girl's moon type. And we'll talk a little bit about more about that as well. I think that one of the things that you're going to find about our panelists and what I've seen through the Thriving Women program is there are so many people doing good things. It's been uplifting and it's been a hopeful journey and experience for me to meet people doing things in various arenas around the world. And these are women that are often, very humble in the things that they do, yet they're making great strides and changes throughout the world. I'm going to turn it over to Mima Salas. And Mima, can you tell us a little bit about what you do with the Seventh Generation Fund as a program coordinator for Thriving Women?
Yes, of course. Yat a she na kai Diné initially. Gabrieliño Kizh bushes chin. Sit na Ginny dashes che. Don na kai dashanele. Hello, everybody. My name is Mima Salas. I'm the program coordinator for Thriving Women. I've been with Seventh Generation Fund for a little over 2.5 years now. I had the opportunity to work for the organization when I moved here to Humboldt County back in 2022. I was introduced to the work through my mom, who's a lactation consultant and a birth worker, and she's been doing this work for over a decade now, and she's my inspiration and my guiding light through this work. And thank you, Deb, for introducing us and serving as a moderator today on the webinar. And thank you, Teresa, for joining us today as well and sharing about your work through Mothers and Daughters Native Moon. I'm happy to be here. A little nervous, but excited to share about the work through Thriving Women. The program was formally established in 2017. And through my work here, working as a program coordinator, I've had the privilege of facilitating a fellowship called the Eagle Feather Fellowship, which was established back in 2021 and part of our New Songs Rising initiative. Our New Songs Rising initiative was created to center community-led projects by serving young Indigenous women and girls throughout the so-called US and territories. It supports multi-generational healing and leadership of Indigenous girls, women through grant making, convening, community building, mentorship, and peer support. And through this work, the Eagle Feather Fellowship was started. We've had successfully led 3 cohorts in the past, beginning in fall 2021. And we're currently on our 4th cohort with 5 fellows. We began this fellowship in July. And the goal of the fellowship is to provide a virtual space for young Indigenous women between the ages of 18 and 24 to engage in peer conversations and to discuss concerns, issues, and opportunities within their communities and what's affecting Indigenous women in particular. At the end of this fellowship, they have the opportunity to implement their own community projects within their own communities, which will be guided and supported through Seventh Generation Fund. Some of our meetings center on some of this work and providing opportunities for the young women to identify things within their communities that they want to address. Some of these look like book drives by providing books to elementary, middle, and high school students on the reservation. And these books are written by Native authors. So it provides an opportunity for those young students to read stories and see imagery of themselves. Another community project that we've been able to support is an Osage storytelling book led by one of our fellows from the Osage community. She's initiating interviews with women within her community and sharing about their livelihoods and the work that they do to just uplift their roles within the Osage community in particular. And she is very dedicated to this work, and also is an artist and an art curator. We also have those who have participated in storytelling through short films. We have two fellows who have successfully done that as well in their communities. Through this fellowship, and for this year particularly, our virtual meetings have began with integrating them into the work of Seventh Generation Fund by inviting our board members, Deborah Sanchez, Dr. Henrietta Mann, and Helene Gaddy to come speak to them. And I want to thank all of them for taking the time to provide that mentorship to our young women who are participating in this fellowship. And moving forward, I've, through my work, have developed really strong relationships with our Thriving Women grantees and invited them to come on as guest speakers during the virtual meetings to share about the work that they're doing in their communities, to hopefully implement like an informal mentorship as well, and have someone that the fellows can go to when it comes to implementing the community projects. Our goal for the fellowship, once it's formally concluded, is to continue those relationships with them and provide that supportive space. I can gladly say that many of our previous fellows still maintain contact with myself and the co-facilitator, Star Green Sky, and regularly communicate amongst themselves via social media and update us, and get together sometimes for events. So it's definitely grown in a really positive and magnificent way for the past 3 years. And I look forward and how it's going to continue to grow in the future. Just recently, we launched our Empowering Arts and Creativity grants in late August. Our goal was to provide $500 grants to Indigenous women and girls artists throughout the globe. These funds can be used to purchase supplies, be used for transportation, whether to gather materials or to go speak to an elder to gain more knowledge, or even to use as a fee for a mentorship program. We really want to keep this wide open for our artists. We initially planned to support 100 artists, and within sharing this opportunity on our social media platforms and our website, within 48 hours, we got nearly 300 applicants. So this really showed, the need out there and the response within the community for support for our artists. And so we've actually more than doubled the grant recipients based on the response from that. And we were able to support 250 artists in the US, in Canada, and in Kenya. And these artists range from the ages of 14 up to 80 years old. And it was wonderful to receive input from them. Many of them wanted to use this as an opportunity to provide spaces for their children, their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews to continue that intergenerational knowledge and whatever artistry that they're pursuing. We had art making ranging from basketry to beading, quill work, digital art, weaving, and hat making, and anything that you could possibly think of. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to just see the magnificent work that these artists have been doing, and hopefully continuing to support them moving forward, and sharing their work on our outreach here on this platform. So that's just a little bit about what I've been engaging with through the Thriving Women program. Deb mentioned that we've had a long-standing relationship with other global Indigenous communities. broadening our global work within Indigenous women worldwide, and primarily focusing within the impacts of climate change. We just recently had a gathering of women from Kenya, Uganda, India, Ecuador, Australia, and New Zealand come together and just share space with one another and envision a future for all Indigenous women, and to share what's going on within their regions of the world. And so moving forward into the future, definitely having some more opportunities to have some knowledge exchanges in regards to that work, in regards to reproductive health, and food sovereignty and traditional foods, and how that correlates to our health. So those are some of the conversations that I've engaged with some of our grantees, and I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. And yeah, so that's just a little bit of what I have to share.
Thank you so much, Mima. I wanted to also just express, one of my community members got one of the grants, and she has been making ribbon skirts for a long time. And I think that there's something, and she's 72. So one of the things that Mima talked about is the wide range of ages that are involved, so like all the way up to 80 years old, and the people that are benefiting from these small grants. They're grants that allow them to buy supplies and continue Indigenous work and arts, etc. But the other thing too was, I think my memory was triggered as well about the global reach that we have. For example, we do have a board member from Ecuador on the Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples. There's a board member from also Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have advisors from Australia, Indigenous Aboriginal person who is in Australia, and then also one from Maasai, Kenya, from Kenya. She's Maasai, and the work that they're doing out there with the various, their communities there as well. So there's a huge global outreach that has been happening through the Seventh Generation Fund, and to see these people also doing so much is pretty amazing. So I am now going to turn this over to Teresa McGinnis, the Chief of Staff for the Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous People, and love for her to tell us more about what she's doing.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Mima, for being here today. Thank you, Deb, and everybody else as well. My name is Teresa McGinnis. I'm a Yurok tribal member. I'm the Seventh Generation Fund Chief of Staff. I've been with Seventh Generation Fund for about 4 years now, and it's been absolutely amazing. But I will speak on our project. I am the founder of Mothers and Daughters Native Moon, and we started as an affiliate of Seventh Generation Fund back in 2021. Originally, we started back in 2017 and been kind of just doing it a little bit just silently doing it until 2021 before we really got noticed by Seventh Generation Fund. So just give you a little history of it. I'm a mother of 5. I have 3 girls and 2 boys, and I am also a wife. I spend a lot of time with researching about period poverty just because it weighed on me for a real long time since I was a young girl. The background history of why this has had a place in my heart was, I started when I was 10 years old. I grew up here in Lolita, California, out on the Table Bluff Reservation in Lolita. And I'm a single mother. She was raising me in the best ability that she could out on the reservation. We lived about 4 miles from the nearest store. And at the time when I started, if I could remember back far, my mother didn't have a reliable vehicle. So a lot of times, going to the store was once a month when we had rides, or when she was able to get us to the store to go shopping she would buy what we needed. But when I started, I was, really quiet and shy, and I wasn't very open with things, and let alone was it discussed like openly with me about what was going on with me, or that I was going to be going through changes. And back then, now that things in social media is out there and it's shared widely amongst a lot of individuals, and compared to back, we had landlines, so that's how our communication was between everybody and talking. But growing up, I struggled. The statistics state that 1 in 4 youth will miss school because they don't have period products, or 1 in 5 will struggle because they don't have them. And I was one of them, and I didn't realize it until now that I dig more into it, that it was huge on me. And so, not going through what I went through, I became a mom, and I didn't want my girls to experience that. I didn't want them to have that burden on them to worry about it, and I wanted them to be aware of what was happening with them, as well as have the resources available. So back in 2017, my oldest daughter, she started, and I went to her class and I went to her teachers. I went and let them know that I was here to help them, that I wanted to make sure that the school had the supplies that they did. I worked with the school, I worked with the teachers, and then my daughter she was aware of it already, because by the time age 7, she was introduced to the flower dance and participating in demonstrations with the Native Women's Collective, and they give her the knowledge of what it meant to have a period and the cultural values of it. So it was, at a young age of 7 years old, and by the time she started, she was excited. It was a huge excitement for her, because she now got to have a flower dance. Still not knowing that, what it meant for me, because I didn't really know. I wasn't raised into my culture. I wasn't raised into ceremonies, and so I had to research all of it and figure out what we were going to do. But since she had that knowledge, it helped me even push more further, so that I can help my girls and help those girls around her. And as time had passed, I just did it out of my own pocket, and whatever funds I had available, I would give what I could. And then she said, "Mom, I need help. Like my neighbors, my friends need supplies. What do we do?" And I said, "Well, we'll give what we can." And throughout the many years, I've had, my other girls come into my life, and same thing, just introducing it to them and having them be aware of everything and not be a statistic, because I didn't want that for them. I didn't want them to struggle. I don't want their future, generations to come to struggle. I want them to be able to stand up and speak for themselves and speak for other girls. So 2021 came around, and it all started with a simple sale on social media of a pair of earrings that I made, and I was like, all proceeds will go towards pads, and our CEO Tia had asked, "What is this about?" And I started telling her what it was about, and she says, "Oh my goodness, let's talk about what we can offer you, what we can help you with, and what we can do to move forward." And well, here we are, and we've been going strong of being able to give out period products. We've give out free. We try to do this in many outlets. We try to do a lot of outreach with educational information about period poverty, what periods mean to us, and get away from the taboo of to believe, that this is a bad thing, that it's shaming that we have this, when we want them to know that it's not. It's natural. It's beautiful. It shows that us women are very powerful, and that this is our strength, and that we can talk about it and be able to voice it and say the word period or say the word pad or tampons, because a lot of times it's not. A lot of people don't believe that you should be able to talk about this or even say it in public, let alone talk about it, to your family members. Some of them don't want to. And, at one point, my husband, and I were talking about things, and he wouldn't really talk about it openly with our daughters. And then next thing you know, we're sitting at the dinner table, and he's asking them, do you need supplies? And he, would make sure that he knew. And, got the knowledge for himself to help our girls so that they are comfortable around them, or anybody else that they're around, that they can talk about this. My girls are young and they're teenagers now and adults, but when they were younger, they were still shy about it. But now they can just go to places and openly talk about it. And they've got to actually, my youngest got to speak in front of Deb, and she was a little nervous, of course, but afterwards she was like, man, that's powerful, because I got my voice. I'm able to be strong and help other individuals. And now she's like, carries it with her, all the time, and makes sure that her friends have them, and that we just help within our communities. And we gear towards Indigenous youth, but we help, my girls help outside of that as well, because it's important to us for all girls to be aware of these products. We started out with giving out the first time moon packs, because all of us have bought in bags and boxes of pads and didn't like them, or didn't, they weren't right for us, so they kind of felt like they went to waste because they're just sitting there. So with our moon time packs, it gave you the variety of things that we can share with the kids, and that they can get to know what these products are and be able to learn. Because a lot of times living on a reservation, you're only getting what's on the actual shelves at the gas stations, and not always is that the best of quality, and not all of our bodies can agree with the products that are in it. So we try to make sure we offer different, I call them gas station products, because that's kind of what we get and what we can get off the shelves. And being able to provide organic and natural products, and as well as the washable cloth pads and reusable underwear that we've brought into the program as well. We try to distribute those when we can. It's quite expensive to provide those type of products, but we try as much as possible. We've worked with many organizations of distributing products and too. However, we try to make sure that we engage one-on-one with a lot of the youth, because it's important that, we tell them that we're here to help them. Our goal is to, provide these products for free. We want to end period poverty. And we believe that is true by one pet at a time. It's just being able to give that to them, and being able to help these youth, and hope that they celebrate their moon time, and instead of being ashamed of it or looking at it as an ugly thing, or that it's wrong. A lot of times just being able for them to say the word period is helping them step over that barrier, and to gain their strength and dignity, and just be proud of it in general, and just to be a girl coming into a womanhood. That's kind of the basics of what we offer and what we do. I love doing it. It is a lot of work, just a lot of communication work, behind the scenes work in reality, but the reward is huge. When we go to do distributions, we try to do them, in open places, to where we do, all products here. They can look at them and find out about it. And we found out that a lot of times it's a lot of men that ask us about things, because they're curious, like, what is this, what are you guys doing? And then they said, oh well, they go on about how many they have family members in their home that need these products. And a lot of the girls are more shy, and and they're like, no, just go talk to them, they're there to help you, and well, they'll give you what you need, and it's all free. When you hear the word free, it gets exciting, and then it goes from there. So it's like, yes, that word will get you through, and then you start talking about periods and pads, and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? I don't want to have this conversation. And I worked with a youth group one time, and it was a male leader, and he says, oh, I'll have one of our female leaders call you. I said, no, I don't want to talk to them. And he's like, oh, okay. He was a little like standoffish about it, but I said, I want to talk to you, because one day one of these young girls are going to come to you and ask you for things, and you need to know what's going on, how to help them. You may be the only one there. You may be, someone that is just right in their path. And then one time after a year has come by, it was like he was calling, hey, can I get more products? Our girls need this. We started this program. And it was nice to know that it went that extra step, and that he took that upon himself to learn that. So, even though we're here to help Indigenous youth girls, it's important that the men also know as well, because we want them to be able to take care of our young ones. And, my daughters, their friends would always ask things like, why do you guys always go to the bathroom together? Or why do you guys always say, check my butt? Or, things like that, because they were scared, they didn't know what, sometimes their periods would start, And then they let the boys know about it because they're like, hey, you need to know about this too. And then they knew that they can help them. And that's one thing that we talk to them as well. We can let them know that they're there to help us as well. And so it's important that we all talk about it and that it's brought into the table, with young and old. We've had many elders that have come to us when we've done events and when we spoke at conventions, and they were like, thank you. We wish you were around when we were younger because this is very important. And, and we didn't realize it, when we're standing there talking to elders, we just listen to them. But then when they start talking, we cry, and they're like, why are you crying? I'm like, because it's like, we're doing something that, you are pushing us. You are within our blood. You keep going because your ancestors are running through you. And guess what? A lot of things, they didn't have this like you do nowadays. So use it and keep going forward and make them proud. So that's our number one goal always, is to make our ancestors proud and be here for, our future to come and for these Indigenous girls as well.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And I wanted to ask you a question. So, as you mentioned, some people didn't want to talk about menstruation, and have there been challenges along the way with your organization and the things that you've been doing?
Our number one challenge is that the companies and organizations that provide these products, that sell these products, the brands that sell these products, they don't work with us. Because, and I've reached out to many of them, like, hey, can you donate, or can you help us with a coupon or something? Because it's quite expensive, but they don't help us. They help outside of us. And that's been like our number one challenge, of being able to buy the products in bulk. A lot of times, like I said, we buy them off the shelves and clearing shelves, and that's kind of hard since, our community is really small, and, we're not the only ones here that need all these products. So that's been a huge challenge. I have not been able to work closely with our local school here where I am. It's been a little bit of a barrier for many reasons I'm not sure of, but we keep pushing and we're not taking no for answers. We keep asking. But that's been the only challenge I've really seen. And I just keep thinking, hey, not everybody's going to be in our corner, and that's okay, because one day they will be, and that's what we're here for. So
When I heard you and your daughter speak on this subject, you talked about the impact on your boys, and I wondered if you could share a little bit about that with us.
Yes. So even though we're called mothers and daughters, Native Moon, I have a 9-year-old son who helps us. He always wants to help, and sisters, what are sisters doing? What's mom doing? I just got to help you. And for the longest time, he didn't know what we were doing. We have their boxes, their pink boxes, and he would see these pink boxes come out, and he'd be watching us put things together. And now he knows, like, oh my goodness, pink boxes, let's start assembling these. I'll help you. And he gets the assembly line going. And so he does help us, and he knows a lot. He had one of his friends come over, and they're talking, and had some stuff sitting out, and he's like, what's all this? His little friend says. So he started telling him about what, our products were and what we do. And he says, well, does your sister need anything? Because we can help her. And I was just like looking at him like, oh my goodness, 9-year-old talking about periods and period products. But it was exciting because he's there to help his friends, and looking at him, knowing that, and I wanted him to know, because he's going to eventually have, a daughter or a female in his life that he's going to have to help and be there and be supportive. And I want him to be able to voice his opinion and be helpful for sure, and be strong in his words to be able to help. So yeah, he does help us, and he has no problem.
Thank you. It's like we're going to change communities one person at a time. Appreciate you, Teresa. And then I wanted to go back to Mima and ask you a question also about the Eagle Fellows. And one of the things that we had talked about, or participating, is you mentioned some elders, right? So we're coming and we're meeting intergenerationally. And you're not, an elder or anything like that. So it's kind of like almost like steps. Like we have different people of different ages involved. And I was wondering about the Eagle Fellows and how that intergenerational interaction, how that affects them, or what you've seen in your participation with Eagle Fellows.
Yeah, I mean, I guess starting off like with the fellows, I always, guide myself, like if you're gonna learn about something, you go to the knowledge keepers first, and I also approach that with my work when it comes to reconnecting to my two-spirit relatives, because I identify as two-spirit, or in my language is Dilba. You go to the knowledge keepers first, and you respect the pathway that they've set for you, and honor the work that they've done, because we wouldn't be where we are now without them. And I know that for many of our fellows, they're on different journeys when it comes to reconnection. Either they're, fully connected to their communities, they participate in ceremony, they know their language, or they're on the other path where they're trying to connect. They're trying to learn their identity, where they come from, who their family is, and the fellowship provides that safe space for them to navigate it. And so when we have elders or knowledge keepers come and speak to them, it's just going back to the old ways of being. We're always having those intergenerational exchanges. It's important to have that. I mean, it's not just the elders who teach the young ones teach too. It's that exchange. You get different depending where you are on your life journey, you get you perceive the world differently, and it's good to have that go on. And so with the fellows, I know they've been very appreciative to have yourself and Dr. Henrietta Mann and Helene come on and speak to them, especially Dr. Henrietta Mann. I remember sitting there at the meeting with them, and granted it is a virtual, but it's still special. And while she was speaking to us, I found myself getting up and lighting my cedar and honoring the space that we were having. And she made sure to tell us, she's like, this is our space. This is our time right now. We might not have this again. And so you can tell that the fellows were sitting there and listening to her intently, and they felt reassured by her words, and I was really appreciative that Dr. Henry Mann, gave that time to us. And I've noticed, through our conversations when it comes to speaking about some difficult things, when it comes to intergenerational trauma or MMIW, which is something that we previously spoke about, having those words of wisdom, guiding them through that, giving them reassurance, giving them strength is important. And so I hope moving forward, by having others participate as guest speakers and sharing about the specific work that they're doing, because Thriving Women supports Indigenous women leaders all across the board in various capacities. Having them be connected to them, gives them options, and shows them that there's possibilities for doing any kind of work that they want to do. So that's kind of how I've seen it so far.
Thank you. And I think that one thing that's really important about these traditional interactions with generations of women, like even Teresa with her daughters, and I think, and then Teresa's experience growing up and how that affected her in knowing that this was an important thing. But one of the things about society, in this modern society in the United States, a lot of times elders are disregarded. They're just kind of tossed to the side. Or I think one of the things that happens when we're interacting with our young women is that there's some value there. Not only that, but I think when I heard those, they were in college, they were doing amazing things, amazing work, in their communities, and they were from all over the country. And one of the things that I felt was that there was a lot of hope. Seeing them, listening to them, what they wanted to do, having those kinds of values, and then to be able to share. So Dr. Mann, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Mann is one of the first Indigenous PhDs. She also just turned 90, I believe, or she's going to be 90. She just turned 90. I think, yeah. And so one of the things about that is that this is a whole entire life experience that's being shared with young people. And I think it's important because it shows our resilience, it shows our survival, it shows also our value in one another as human beings, whatever age we are, wherever we're coming from, and whatever stage we're at in our own a recognition of our tribal ways or our indigenous cultural ways. I think that that's really important because we're growing, and no matter how long you live, and you're continuing to learn and to grow, and that's really important. So I just wanted to say thank you for that too, and for facilitating those intergenerational interactions, because it helps give purpose, and it also is inspiring for us as we're getting older, and that's really valuable. I think you're not alone, so. And then Mima and I are sharing going back for well, I'm going back for my master's degree after 30 years. She's in the master's program. I know I can identify, but even with the struggle that it creates in our lives. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the project that I'm involved with, which is it's the Chumash Cultural Collective, and a big part of that, the core center of that, is revitalizing and reclaiming our indigenous language, which is Smuich. It's one of the Chumash languages. There are other communities that are also revitalizing and reclaiming the languages. The last speaker of any of the Chumash languages died in 1965. So to go into that endeavor to bring the languages home again has been an incredible struggle. And extreme language shift occurred in the United States for people across the country, right? So that's a phenomenon that we all share. What stage our languages are in are all in different ways, right? So there were boarding schools that back in the when there were boarding schools, but part of the strategy was to get people not to talk. So they would purposefully, and it came out in the investigative report on boarding schools, how they would mix different tribes up in these locations so that they wouldn't have an opportunity to use their language, and the unifying language would be English. So the reason I mention that is because to really understand the incredible sacrifice or effort that it takes to raise a language back or bring it back to the people, you have to put it in that backdrop, and that's all over. That's all over the world. But in particular, my experience, when I started to teach the language or learn the language, it was through family members that knew some things. It was my grandfather died and he left language cards behind. And so there was the sense that it was really important. So my mom and my uncle first started to go to language recovery seminars for California natives. And then that importance got passed on to me. I got it from my mom and my uncle, my family, that they thought that this was important, and I internalized that. And I think I want to talk about these women that I'm working with. There's 12 Indigenous Chumash women that have been kind of like the central, the core of everything, of raising that language and bringing it back. They've dedicated themselves in terms of learning the language and speaking the language. And in order to bring the language back to, you really need your kids. But in order to do that, we have to understand the adults have to be proficient enough to teach others. We hit a milestone in November of 2021, which was 2 of my former language students are now teaching beginners. And I think that that's really important because is more than just me, it's other people. And they are now teaching people that are beginners. But one of the things that I had to do back in when I first started, I started teaching in 2010. I took a break after my grandmother died for about a year and a half. And then in 2014, I started teaching again in Santa Barbara. But one of the things that happened is that I realized that I had to ask for a commitment from the students because part of what was happening is people were coming in and out and they wouldn't stay. So part of or they would come and they would go. And so we were always starting at a different level every time we got together. And it was very frustrating for the people that were there all the time and wanted to advance. And so these women made their commitment to the language, and they're still committed. And they're not only using the language, they're participating in learning the language. They do self-study. I mean, we're kind of scattered in terms of our California's history has created this situation for California natives, and all of us are California natives here on this panel, partly, right? So the devastation that was created, these pockets of people are changing the trajectory of the world. Pockets of people that are out there doing the things that we do, many times unseen or unknown, but at the same time changing things, changing the dynamics, because at least for me and what I've seen with the people that I work with in revitalizing the language and reclaiming it, is that it is your worldview is really embedded in the language. And I think there were so many things that were trapped in my mind in terms of how I saw the world that I could try to explain in English, before I started to deeply study the language. But I can see the difference in what I'm trying to communicate, and it's very hard to say in English sometimes some of our words and what they mean. But it's the women that they're also, all of these people that are studying in the language, in the Shmuich language, are also culture bearers, and they're regalia makers and plant people. They have plant knowledge, medicine knowledge. They're creative, like making jewelry. And oh, by the way, Teresa makes beautiful jewelry. I just wanted to point that out. But they're jewelry makers, right? And they're also they make ribbon skirts, and they're involved in their different things in maritime waves and being supportive. And there's just so much, I think, that is being done. But also one of the phenomena that I think is that we have people that are in the language and they're also involved in all these other things. So they wear different hats. And I think it doesn't surprise me at all, because the people that I see in other language programs, revitalizing language programs, are the same people I see maybe in environmental issues. The same people that I see in situations involving tribal issues. They're the same. I see the same people, and they're also involved in the language. So that doesn't surprise me, because I think in that commitment, the commitment to our indigenous ways is also really a core part of that, is also embedded in our reclamation of our own languages. So I think we have some time for some questions. Oh, and so there's a question, and it's, can you tell us what has been the greatest challenges for Indigenous women? Mima, we'll start with you.
The climate crisis that we're facing now, and the correlation with extractive industries, and how that has always impacted Native bodies, specifically gender-based violence against Indigenous women. And through Thriving Women and the work that we're doing, we are continuing to uplift matrilineal lifeways and uplifting our sovereign roles within our own communities. And unfortunately, through colonialism and the invasion of patriarchy, that has undermined our traditional roles, our livelihoods. And so unfortunately, we see a disproportionate rate of violence against Indigenous women and girls. And, you know, when it comes to, you know, even just coming to renewable energy and having these foreign like entities, these foreign corporations coming in and developing within, you know, near tribal communities, this is like a really big concern. At least this is something that I'm seeing. You know, I have a number of grantees that I've communicated with who are on the ground and fully advocating for policy change when it comes to protection for Native women, working with local law enforcement to better procedures when it comes to identifying those who are missing, and also just doing preventative measures around education for young girls around, you know, trafficking and healthy relationships. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who's developing a curriculum for high school students, and she's going to broaden that curriculum, and she's getting feedback from 6 young Indigenous girls who are actively indigenizing that curriculum and educating girls and young boys about healthy relationships and boundaries, which is really, really important. And that's just a work that we need to continue, and we just need to continue creating safer spaces for our relatives. So I would think that's probably the greatest challenge. And I think that goes hand in hand with like a lot of things. I think a lot of things are interconnected when it comes to just certain challenges that are facing our Native communities. So yeah, that's a very broad answer. It could really go into any direction.
Well, thank you so much, Mima. And I'll take that question to Teresa.
Thank you. The greatest challenge is just those 2 words in general, being Indigenous and being a woman, because a lot of people don't believe in us, and they're not in our corner, and they won't like what we do. We are very powerful with our voices and very straightforward, and we stand up, and that's what we're raised to do. So just those words in general, when I hear those words, I'm like, I'm already not believed in because I am Indigenous. It's challenges in general.
Well, we have one more question. It's like a statement, but it is a question as well. And I think this is really important too. So Jenny, she says, what are ways that we Africans in diaspora and other diasporan people can show up for and learn from Native peoples and women? For those of us who have been displaced for so long, especially someone like myself whose ancestors were kidnapped from Africa and brought to Turtle Island, it can be difficult to feel connected anywhere. Although we know we are Indigenous to distant lands, but we've traveled here. And now I would love to learn and stand in solidarity and help carry the culture forward. So I think what I would like to do is just answer that too, is that, you know, that we need to stand for each other, right? So when we have these issues that have come up for women that are, you know, I think that standing for each other, like you're saying, and learning more and showing up at these different events or educational opportunities to really learn about each other and to stand with each other in solidarity, as you mentioned. I think that that's critically important. The fact that you're here and you're listening to these amazing women, panelists, and also learning more about what is important or what we're working on in terms of our own in our own local atmospheres. And, I think that that's important too. And then we need to do the same thing. We need to do that as well. And there have been other people that have mentioned this to me too, because they've been displaced and they're here, not of their own choosing, right? Through these generational tragedies that have occurred for all of us in this country. I think that that's one of the reasons why we need to be very aware of each other and what we're going through in the different aspects. But I also think that you can invite yourself, like, for example, contact the Seventh Generation Fund. There may be opportunities for us to get together and gather and talk about these issues as well, because I think that there are many ways that we can stand for each other. I know that we're getting close to the end. We're going to last minute words. And so at this time, why don't we each take a minute just to conclude for this webinar? Let me go with Mima.
Yeah, of course. I just want to say thank you, Deb, for, providing your feedback and moderating this webinar. And thank you, Teresa, for sharing more about your work and what you're doing with Mothers and Daughters Native Moon. I'm really happy Seventh Generation Fund is able to support you and be there for you and see you grow organizationally. And I wish you luck to your daughter who's in college and to the one who's still home. I was really happy that she was able to speak to us over the summer, and I could tell she was getting really excited as she was there. And thank you to all those who joined this webinar and listened. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mima. And Teresa, final comments?
Yes, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Mima, and thank you everybody else as well. And special thank you to the Seventh Generation Fund for believing in all of us and for stepping forward and being here for our peoples today and being here for the future to come. Again, thank you very much for the support with Mothers and Daughters Native Moon. This is just the stepping start, I believe, and we're just going to keep thriving, and you as well. And thank you again.
Thank you. And I also just want to say that let's continue to uplift one another. Let's continue to support one another in these endeavors. And all of these pockets of every aspect that we're trying to move the world forward in a good way. And I have hope that we can help make the world a better place, as small pockets of communities or globally, when we put our minds to it. So thank you very much for joining us. And let's continue to uplift one another and support these works. Thank you.